So welcome my challenging the road towards privacy on Bitcoin, Bitcoines. Who wrote Bitcoines? Tachemos eso.
Not sure there.
Bueno, Bitcoines. We don't even know. Yes, welcome.
Okay.
Come on. Woohoo! Woo! Bueno. And one behind the mask. Yes? Guys, enjoy, and we are missing one chair on stage. It's Friday, it's the last day, you know, things just don't go.
Why not?
Yeah.
Just to expose a little bit more.
Can I...
Hola, ¿qué tal? Os habla Lunaticoin y es un placer estar aquí con estos monstruos. Tengo silla.
From the way you walk, somebody will do biometric inference.
I am like 25% dogs, I would guess now. I will try to keep the 75%. So now I'm switching to English, of course, because none of you speak full Spanish, right? Nah, okay. So we're here to talk about privacy, no? And we know Bitcoin is pseudonymous peer-to-peer cash, but it's built on a public chain of blocks that you can basically check everything there. That has its good things, but also bad things. Basically, when I mean bad, it means that you can see everything and you can trace everything. So my first question is, how hard is to be private in Bitcoin? Who goes with this one?
You go to lunch on the business center if you want to eat something.
All right. What is private? Unfortunately, this privacy, security, this is not a binary thing, and that's why it's so difficult to discuss, because there are so many variables, so many attributes. You are probably never going to achieve perfect security or perfect privacy. It's really the question of how much effort are you willing to put into it? How much effort do you want it to take for an adversary to break through it?
You want to go, Taj?
Sure. I'd say the first thing, there's certainly definitely different levels as well, but probably the first one that I'm sure Jameson will talk about in his next talk is if you don't have your own keys, the privacy is all sort of moot because you don't even have Bitcoins to be private in the first place. And so many people who, they say, I have Bitcoin, maybe they have some kind of claim on Bitcoin, but they don't have it themselves. And so any transaction they do is going to be reported by this exchange and stuff. And even beyond that, you say, okay, well, I'll move it to some kind of web wallet or even Electrum. You lose a lot of privacy. So one thing that I'm trying to work on and many people are trying to work on is to make it easier and push people to say, okay, run your own node, have your own keys, like that's sort of a table stakes. Like you need to have that to start getting privacy.
Mm-hmm. That was a very good point, Jameson, because this what kind of privacy are we talking here? We're talking about traceability, no? The how easy it is for an observer to see what you do with your money. And if you connect that with KYC, then basically you are exposing all your economic activity. And I have been experienced these days in El Salvador with many kind of shops, some big ones like Starbucks, but others like regular markets. And yeah, we need to educate a lot. People don't know what's on-chain, people don't know what's off-chain. And that makes me think that if we think right now in Bitcoin, you can achieve good privacy in the traceability aspect. You can do coin joins, coin swaps, and if you do coin control and so on, you can get away with it. But my question here is about, can we really get this kind, because this is a very active measures, no? These are active measures. Can we get somehow a passive by default measures inside Bitcoin so that newcomers are not exposing constantly themselves by using Bitcoin?
So I'll add something here, Lunaticoin. So certainly it's fair to say that if you don't take any steps, you are doxing quite a lot of information out there. But perhaps for small value commerce, if you're just doing a Lightning transaction, and depending on who you're trying to be private from, as Jameson was pointing out, you are at least not doxing out your entire stack size or doxing out your earnings if you make a small Lightning payment, even if you're using the likes of Phoenix or Moon, at least not out to the world. You might be doxing that to Async or to Moon. So there's little aspects there that we could say, to your point, that some of these things are made a little bit more private by default, even if it's not the mythical perfect privacy.
Yeah, I would say that the problem with privacy by default is that the default is not just technical, it's also social, it's also a matter of users' habits. For example, in Bitcoin, the protocol says, since the white paper already, that you shouldn't reuse addresses. Then again, people didn't care because it was just more practical and the threat model was not obvious. A difference between privacy and security in general is that in privacy, especially in privacy, it's difficult to teach people what is the worst consequence of their action in the future. It's not a present danger, it's a future danger. So far, everything is cool, everything is fine. I'm not afraid, I have nothing to hide, so I don't want privacy. But then when you realize that you need it, it's often too late because you already gave it away. So for example, in the Bitcoin protocol, reusing addresses was deprecated since the day one, but people didn't care, and so wallet builders, they started to build wallets that were reusing addresses, or they ignored CoinJoin until a few years ago, where they started to integrate CoinJoin practices. They did fingerprinting on the spending modes. They consolidated heuristics by chain analysis companies because they didn't care. I think that the good thing that we are going to face now with the especially layer 2 technologies is that there are two ways of being private on so a system like Bitcoin shares the same challenges of any other computer system. So the typical privacy challenges of network privacy and physical privacy. Plus there is a new exceptional thing, which is the global consensus that forces every node to download and verify every other transaction by every other node. So the global consensus is very bad for privacy. You have two ways to get around this exclusive privacy challenge, which is typical of Bitcoin and not of other systems. One way is to basically pollute this global consensus with a lot of more information. So privacy by obfuscation. You add a lot of information. For example, you do different hopes, you do a coin join, you do cryptographic stuff on the chain level like confidential transaction. The problem with this approach is that there is a trade-off between privacy and cost. If you put more stuff on the global ledger, then you have to pay more. If you do more hops on chain, if you put more inputs in a transaction, or if you use confidential transaction or ring signature, you have bigger stuff, so you pay more. So people will probably not be incentivized to do this kind of privacy, because if they can get away with less cost, they will probably choose to optimize the cost and not the privacy. While stuff like Lightning Network, they could in the future mitigate the privacy problem not by putting more stuff on chain, not by obfuscating, but by omitting directly. So you put less stuff on the global ledger. You only touch the global consensus when you really need to, and you keep everything else private. So this doesn't mean that Lightning Network or any other stuff like that. These are not like silver bullets, because there are still all the normal network level challenges that you still have, and also you bring along some privacy leaks from the on-chain level to the off-chain level. But at least we can have two complementary tools. When you go on-chain, you are safer from a network privacy level, because every node will receive the transaction, so nobody can triangulate you as a receiver. On the Lightning Network, it's easier to triangulate you as a receiver. But your on-chain privacy is better, of course, if you stay off-chain most of the time. So the second kind of privacy has an advantage. It is that it also saves you money or time in most of the cases. So we can hope that people will default to Lightning, not because they care for privacy, but because they want to save some bucks. So if we make Lightning more private, that will just add. And also stuff like, in the future, maybe cross-input signature aggregation. If that saves you 20% of the cost, maybe people will start to to choose that and to choose wallets that implement that because of the fees, not because of the privacy. So we can have a good incentive alignment.
Yeah, well, I think I'm good now. Like you said, it's about incentives. I think it's also about defaults. And the problem, and this is true, I think, for almost anything technology or internet related in general, is the default is almost never for strong privacy. And that's because it is rarely in the interest of the person creating the service or the software to do that. This is corporate surveillance, surveillance capitalism. But there are certainly ways that wallet and service developers can improve the privacy of what they're doing. Like you said, better mixing software. I would think mixing software would actually need to be just happening as a default in the background with the wallet. People shouldn't even have to know that they're doing mixing. They shouldn't have to know what a UTXO is. Other examples are, there's actually PayJoin, where you can be making a payment and actually be doing a little bit of mixing while you're doing that, just helping to continually obfuscate the UTXO graph, make this transaction analysis more difficult.
One thing I'd like to add about the sort of privacy by default, it's even more important because there's the concept of anonymity sets. And some people, to get true privacy and anonymity, you want it to be so that it could be anyone doing this transaction. But many techniques, such as CoinJoin or things like that, you have a limited anonymity set where you're not sure it's one person, it may be one of 10 people or 100 or even 1,000. But if it's not the default, if it's something that people have to actively go out and look for and seek, you have this sort of weird thing where, let's say someone is buying marijuana on a darknet market, and they think, I have something to hide, right? I want privacy. I don't care about cost. I really want to have privacy here because I don't want to get caught or deposit at an exchange and then they close my account or something. So they say, I'm going to use CoinJoin. But maybe the other 5 people using CoinJoin with them also said, oh yeah, I was also buying marijuana on the exchange. And then your anonymity set is these other people who want anonymity. And you actually want your anonymity set to be mostly people who don't care about anonymity. And so you want the default because that strengthens anonymity for everyone. And so it's kind of this weird tragedy of the commons where if the people who say, I have nothing to hide, I don't need privacy, I really argue with them, no, your privacy is not just yours. When you reveal your privacy, and if you publish, say, I'm going to reuse the same address every day, I'm going to say, hey, this is me, this is how much money I have, you're not just hurting your own privacy, you're hurting, in a small way, but real way, everyone else's privacy, right? Because if there's only one person with privacy in the entire Bitcoin network, they don't have any privacy, right? Because they're the last person left and you know exactly what they're doing. So there is this sort of tricky thing where everyone sort of has to work together. And I think the easiest way is to make that the default, make that the cheapest, make it the easiest way to do it.
Was it privacy only goes so far as the cooperation of one's fellows in society?
Sure.
Right, and to add to that example, it's like, let's say you care about your privacy, so you delete your Facebook. But you've got family and friends who still post up photos, and you're still in some of those photos. Well, what's your chances now, right? So that's an example. But to the point about defaults, my hope is that some of the coming technical developments, things like Taproot, things like V2 channels, where maybe the channel opening and closing could look like a PayJoin, potentially, and ideas like trampoline routing, route blinding on the Lightning Network that might help the defaults, so that way, without really even thinking about it, that end user with his wallet is just paying without knowing, but actually in the background it's doing some of these privacy techniques that perhaps give some additional level of privacy as a default.
And I suspect most of the people in the audience don't even know what these things are that we're talking about, and you shouldn't have to. That's the whole point.
Yeah. That's the whole thing, and that's why for me also it's very important that we get to a point that defaults, that people just don't load a wallet and they can be using Bitcoin without exposing. Because I had this conversation with other peers. All of us, these good Bitcoiners, we started, for example, buying in Coinbase, using KYC, and there is a point that you understand what is everything, and then you change, no? it would be just great that people can start in a good way, but I know that that's difficult. Something that we listen quite a lot this year and last year even is about Taproot. Taproot just got activated being here in El Salvador. And yeah, this has been, there was some sayings like, yeah, don't worry, when Taproot is activated, yeah, we will be like full private. We know that's not true, but what can we expect to have now with Taproot in the privacy field?
Well, the first thing is that, first of all, wallets and tools will have to adopt the new Taproot activated options, which will be super challenging and super slow. So since the day of the activation, nothing, literally nothing happened to Bitcoin privacy or any other Bitcoin characteristic. Then there will be a strange, weird, paradoxical phase in which tools adopting Taproot style of smart contracts will actually be less private than the others, just for the reason mentioned by Taj before. If only one wallet is using script, key path or the tap script, then these wallets are fingerprinting more than the others. So there will be, even just with new Taproot addresses, there will be a phase in which when you upgrade and other people don't, you are losing anonymity set a little bit. This, luckily, will be overcome, again, by other kind of incentives, because people will also save some money in complex smart contract with Taproot using the TapScript. So eventually, you will have a phase where there will be real privacy. I think that one of the misconceptions that people may have is that Taproot will improve the privacy of every transaction. Actually, it will mostly improve the privacy of if it is also being used by every other transaction, just like Taj said. It will be improving multi-sig contracts, basically. And we have a couple of real-world uses of that, which is Lightning channels. So we will have Lightning channels that when they close, they look exactly as any other transaction, which is very good. And then cold storage multi-sig schemes, so 2 of 3 wallets, escrow transactions, stuff like that, they will be as private as a single signature transaction. So it's something that we should be excited about in perspective, but not something we should be over-hyped about in the short term, because in the short term, nothing will change.
But you do need to start asking your wallet provider when Taproot, because we know from experience that it may take some of them 4-5 years to implement new technologies.
Yeah, but I would say Taproot is, once everyone's using it, it's great because everything looks the same. Right now, you can look and, oh, the address starts with a 3. Maybe it's an exchange. Or, oh, this is a 1. Okay, maybe it's someone's personal wallet. Like, even just looking yourself, you don't know, but you can have some idea. But if everyone's using Taproot, everything looks the same. You have no idea if it's one signature, many signatures. It's really nice that way.
And add to that point around the defaults, don't forget, we're still early in Bitcoin's adoption, so there'll be a lot of new people coming in. And if the defaults, so as an example, let's say the new users coming in are using Moon Wallet, and that supports the Taproot style. And so maybe those new people coming in are adding to the default anonymity set over time. But important to echo to not overhype the benefit. It's coming, but it's not to be overstated.
It feels like we are really in an early stage in Bitcoin, that we are creating the tools, that right now we are only creating more fingerprinting in the blockchain, that you can even see. We could say that we're getting worse with new ads because you can see more things, but all of this that we are creating is for the future to have like a standard, or what everybody jumps in and thinks is the standard, so that then we can mix in the crowd.
It seems like it's always a moving goalpost, though, because every time you try to standardize something, then someone else comes out with a new innovation, and there's some new thing, and that might leave a fingerprint. And so that is, I guess, the tension of the fingerprinting, or trying to cut against those fingerprints, versus people who are trying to innovate and provide new features or some new way of using Bitcoin.
Yeah, on many levels, that's sort of a back and forth arms race where people, Dandelion was, oh, here's how to make not even transactions, but just propagating messages between nodes that you'll never really see, how to make that more private. And they wrote a paper, tried to use it. Someone else writes a paper, I figured out how to break this. So it never even got into Bitcoin Core because someone found out a problem with it before it even got in. But then people say, okay, how can we make it stronger without this problem? So there's definitely an arms race. And what's interesting is that in a lot of communities, it's both sides. You know, people saying, I broke the privacy. I found a privacy leak. That can still be very valuable to improve privacy. And vice versa. I found a way to make this more private. And you want people to try to break your system. You want people to try to break your system openly and write papers about it. You don't want them to secretly break your system, and then everyone thinks they have privacy and don't. That's the worst. So it is sort of an arms race back and forth, but it's generally good fun. And sometimes at conferences I say, oh, welcome to my threat model. You know, like we're working towards the same goal, but sort of trying to fight each other in a way.
Also, ossification will solve that. It will be painful from some point of view because we want more innovation. But think about the Internet Protocol. The base layers of the Internet Protocol, the IP version 4 layer, is unchanging since the 80s. And is bad because there may be many good ideas to improve the base layer of the internet, but that is good because we could use with this very reliable and static foundations in order to build on top the entire internet we are using now to broadcast this event and everything. Internet Protocol version 4 probably sucks compared to many things that we could have done since the 80s, but we needed the base layer to settle down and to become stable enough to build an entire world of application on top of it. So I guess that this kind of tension will also change with the ossification of the base layer. Probably the changes to the blockchain protocol will become less and less frequent, and I hope that will happen after cross-input signature aggregation and some other privacy stuff. But eventually it will happen, and then we will move innovation at the margins. We will move innovation on top, on the other layers, so that we can actually keep improving while also avoiding this paradox that everything is changing under our feet continuously.
So, and if people thought that Taproot was going to be the killer app for privacy, before that, people thought that Lightning Network was already the killer app. With time and education, we realized that not at all, that there is a lot that you can see. But lately I'm very excited. I'm studying them. I'm studying adapter signatures, and I really like what you can do with them. And I know that, for example, just as an example, adapter signatures can give a lot of privacy to Lightning routing. So my question here is, how much more private do you think we can get in Lightning?
I can say that, yeah, adapter signatures are a huge help. So the current way Lightning routes is with HTLCs, hash time lock contracts. And the hashes, it's sort of paradoxical in that you're not using signatures anymore. You're doing this very simple reveal a hash preimage. So you're essentially showing your private key in a way with Lightning when you reveal for the HTLC. And that does hurt privacy in that it's all the same throughout the path. You can see the same hash. So if someone's able to observe here and here, they can say, this payment must have gone through. I think we're looking at point time lock contracts, or PTLCs, using something like adapter signatures, using the new Taproot Schnorr signatures. And it's really nice because directly it says, okay, it looks different every step of the route. So I think it certainly helps, and that will eliminate a lot of problems, a lot of ways that privacy can be lost in Lightning Network transactions. But I'm sure people will find, there's always, it's a sort of cat and mouse. People will find timing attacks or other ways to try to find how the payments are going through the network. But PTLCs will, and adapter signatures will be a big help.
So Lightning is a very different beast. Whereas with Bitcoin, most people worry about the on-chain privacy because the blockchain is the public ledger. With Lightning, you have this completely new network. And yes, it uses onion routing and has other privacy characteristics, but there's still kind of a flip side to that, which is if you want to use Lightning, you have to have a view of the network. So there are all of these liquidity-related economic issues where you have to balance the ability to see the network in order to be able to use it versus the ability for anyone to map all of the activity that's happening on the network. And like we've said, the cat and mouse game with privacy, with security, these are never-ending battles. It's why some of us in this space will be well employed for the foreseeable future, because this is a thing that never ends.
Yes, there may be a lot of improvement in the Lightning Network. Taj mentioned PTLC, and Stefan before mentioned trampoline nodes and many other things. We already can see actually some ways in which the Lightning Network today, even without improvements, can mess with chain analysis heuristics. For example, people were discussing coin swap since a long time, so you can swap a coin with another without a coin join in order to break the heuristics, but there was not yet a very easy to use tool for that. There is Chris Belcher created the coin swap tool, but it's not really user grade yet. But then somebody started to realize that if we open a Lightning channel and you do a submoney swap, which is a technology created for something completely different, which is trustless liquidity providing, then you are basically doing a coin swap. So you can use the Lightning wallet today, if you are very careful about what you do, to increase your privacy. The problem, again, is that there is no much education on what you do. You can just as much increase your privacy and decrease it a lot if you use Lightning in the wrong way. So there is still a lot of work to do.
I think I might offer a little bit of a white pill as well, that for the people who are concerned about privacy, I think probably the key one is, if that's your main concern, acquiring coins without KYC is probably the important first step for you. And so if you do that, you're already in a relatively good position. And then from then, if you use CoinJoin and other privacy techniques, use your own Bitcoin full node, you're already in a relatively decent position, at least for the people who are serious about their privacy. And for the other people, hopefully the defaults over time will improve. And people, as an example, people working at the protocol layer, talking about the Lightning specification and things like that, where they will find all these improvements and put them in at the specification level, or will be done at the implementation level, so that the LNDs and the C Lightnings and the asyncs of the world make those end users a bit more private just by default.
Let me stress this just 1 second a little bit more. A few months ago, the Ledger company had a leak of the purchasing list of the hardware wallet. So there was a list containing your home address and maybe your name, and the fact that you just had an hardware wallet. This information was enough to be used for a lot of phishing attacks that basically were very effective because very targeted on people. So it was a huge risk. Now, consider that every time you buy Bitcoin with a KYC exchange, you are getting into a list which is not like the one of Ledger, just with your address, but there is a certified residence address, your name, your document, your face, every single coin you purchase at every single price with any withdrawal, with any on-chain address of the withdrawal. So the kind of list you enter and you get yourself into when you buy KYC, and then this list is not remaining, the Ledger list was remaining with Ledger and was leaked. The KYC list gets transmitted to many government agencies around the world, to probably, I would say, at least thousands of people accessing those lists. So the probability of this list leaking and putting you in great danger of worst case kidnapping, best case phishing or spam is very, very high. So buying Bitcoin KYC free is hard, expensive, but there is a strong reason to do that to protect yourself and your loved ones.
We're running out of time, but that's very good, because my last question was which advice would you give somebody who is starting now in Bitcoin to more or less start private or to preserve privacy in a way? Stefan and Giacomo already said it, so maybe the missing parties want to give an advice?
I think not only from a privacy perspective, but also just the Bitcoin economy, I find it less important that people go out and find exchanges that are KYC free, and I find it more important that people start accepting Bitcoin for the goods and services that you produce, because that's really what we need to close the loop on having a circular economy where people can both buy things and sell things with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree that too, and no exchange, not just a no KYC exchange, just no exchanges at all, and just if you know people and say, hey, can I buy some Bitcoin from you? And I've done that a million times. I mean, it's sort of easy for me to say that because I work on Bitcoin and everyone I know uses it. So it's easy to say, hey, can I give you some money for Bitcoin in different countries, exchange money, things like that. And it's harder if you don't really have a connection. But maybe go to meetups, meet people, talk to people. And that's sort of the real decentralized peer-to-peer layer where you're just meeting people, hey, can I buy 20 bucks of Bitcoin?
And that's how it worked before there were exchanges. Yeah. It was just people meeting up, sometimes online, sometimes in person.
Yeah. Guys, thank you very much for this amazing talk. And if somebody wants to keep on learning Bitcoin, si alguien quiere seguir aprendiendo Bitcoin, hay un montón de recursos, pero os recomiendo en español estudiobitcoin.com y también tengo que dar un abrazo desde aquí, desde El Salvador, a la comunidad de Bitcoin 2140. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thanks so much, everybody.